But if any of this is usable, it'll get inserted at the end, or it'll be the cold open.
Go on about the inserting.
Yeah.
Just like the spit roast.
Just like the spit roast. Yeah. No, I like it. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Open!
I know. I was just seeing how upset I could make you. Hello and welcome to the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my friend Kirk. Say hi, Kirk.
Yo, yiggity yo.
Yo. And we have a very special guest with us.
Don't write checks that my ass can't cash.
Okay. For the first and hopefully not the last time, may I introduce our good friend Benny. Say hi, Benny.
Hi, Benny. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you, man. I'm super excited. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, fellas. Other than these two games, which I'm sure took all of your week.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because they're
amazingly long.
Very long.
In my defense, though, I did go ahead and play Vectorman 2 along with Vectorman, just because like Vectorman 2 is like twice as big of a game. So, went ahead and played that too. But other than that, still playing Elden Ring.
Yep.
I've been on that on and off. Didn't really have the best week in the world and just wasn't in the mood for games.
Yeah.
And then swapped out Miles Morales temporarily with the Dead Space remake.
How is that?
It's absolutely wonderful and terrifying. Super faithful to the original, but also adding mechanics into the game. Just quick example to, so I don't harp on this all day.
Okay.
Not harp, more like applaud and
no, you're a fucking harpy. It's okay.
But the trans system, or in the original game, where it takes you from level to level,
sure,
you can pretty much take that at any time, really.
Okay.
Well, to certain areas, you still have to unlock areas, but now it's part of like the overall game mechanic where you can, like, it's part. Some missions actually make you go back to the other areas. So I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah.
And there's really no like loading time animation for it anymore. Like you just get on the tram and then you go to the next thing.
That's awesome.
I played that recently with my wife, and she had never seen it, so it was actually one of her early introductions to horror in video games, and so I think that was an excellent introduction.
Oh, hell yeah!
That first, like when that first necromorph drops through the ceiling, is just it's kind of a revelation.
Her starting point was like one of the scariest games to date.
I know. I was unfair to her, but also, she's a horror nut, so it was perfect.
I was going to say, I feel like she probably took it better than you did.
Yeah, because she didn't have to like willfully like go into rooms where things were going to try to murder me,
right?
Like with the controller, like I have to like willfully do the thing that we all yell at horror movie characters not to do.
Right. So now that there's a Dead Space remake, maybe we'll finally get the John Carpenter Dead Space movie that they've been teasing for years.
That'd be incredible.
Although if it's also scary, it would be bad. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was gonna say if it's half as good as Ghosts of Mars, clearly it'll be fantastic. But yeah, Benny, what about you? What have you been playing?
I have been playing Graveyard Keeper. I don't know if either of you know what that is. It's basically a Stardew Valley clone, but kind of a dark and spooky.
Yeah, I saw like an ad for that. That looked cute.
Yeah, I bought it on sale a while back. It's rated extremely well on Steam.
Yeah.
It's a ton of fun. I'm kind of hooked right now.
Yeah.
And it, not that Stardew Valley has a lot of problems, but like it fixes some of the things that I don't personally like about it so much. So.
Yeah.
And it's cute.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Awesome. Stardew Valley, it immediately became one of my favorite games. Like it's so cute and so fun so deep. It is so ridiculously deep. Mm-hmm. But I will say it pissed me off the other day. I was reading an article about it wasn't Graveyard Keeper, but it was another.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, another one of these like farming sim games, and they used the term Stardew like. Harvest Moon is like 30 years old.
And the creator of Stardew Valley created Stardew Valley because he was pissed off because he was waiting for a Harvest Moon game to come out. So he was like, fuck you, I'm going to make my own game.
Right.
Blackjack.
And hookers. Yeah. Only forget the game. I have a problem with game genre names that are just the names of a game anyway. But when it's not even the name of a game that came out in the first 20 years of the genre...
Yeah, if you're gonna call something a Souls type, you're at least going from like the eponymous entry in the genre,
right?
Like you're actually going from like what originated the form, more or less,
right?
I'm sure there's an argument against what I just said too, but still,
to be fair, Harvest Moon was mostly an Eastern game. Or Japan game.
Yeah.
It wasn't really huge over here, and I think that's why it's a Stardew-like, because everybody in the world has access to it, or better access to it, and it doesn't require... It's on multiple consoles.
Yeah.
It can run on a potato.
Sure.
Was it accessible to people or not?
Yeah.
Does it deserve the credence? Does it not? Whereas, you're absolutely right, Harvest Moon was there, but how many of us can raise our hands in this room and say, I have played through Harvest Moon and beat it? Let the record show nobody in this room raise their hands. So, yes.
Wait, am I under oath right now?
Yes. So Stardew-like is very appropriate.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, lawyered.
Damn. Owned. Well,
ointment for that sick burn.
Well, not that any of you fuckers asked, but I was playing...
inflammatory,
right? No, I was playing Slay the Princess. So I kept seeing stuff for it, and I think the reason why I kept getting served ads for this or served reviews of this was because of Doki Doki Literature Club, because it's a horror-themed visual novel, and it's gotten really super popular reviews, and so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. It was, I think, $15, and
so is it the same type of visual novel then?
Not really. So it's a black and white visual novel, and it's all hand-drawn animation, and the animation is fantastic. And so there's a little bit of motion in each scene, but it's pretty static. I mean, it does have that kind of classic Japanese visual novel thing where you're just clicking choices and seeing pretty static panels. The elevator pitch for it is: you wake up, you are immediately confronted with a disembodied voice telling you that you have to go to this cabin and kill this princess. And if you don't, then the world's going to end. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So you go, regardless of what choice you make, light spoilers, but you'll find this out in the first 3 minutes of playing the game. Regardless of what choice you make, you immediately wake back up after having made that choice, and the disembodied voice tells you to go kill the princess.
Oh.
So it's like a Groundhog's Day type situation, but it's a choices matter game. And so I hate that so fucking much.
It is kind of platitudinous. It's just like...
Right. Of course choices matter. Choices matter. Fucking Alpha Centauri. Choices mattered in that game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It turns out if you just sit on your ass and wait for the mindworms to come and flay your fucking family, that wasn't the right way to play the game. Choices matter. It was a choice, right? So anytime I see that fucking hashtag on Steam, it always pisses me off.
I guess I'd never really had that put into words, but it's just a decision tree.
Yeah.
Like why are we gussying up a decision tree? Because that's all it is.
Yeah. Every game has that.
Till we have procedurally generated plots, and then that's going to be a nightmarescape if I've ever heard of one.
So basically, you're saying until Konami releases their next game.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
100%. You cannot convince me that Konami is not going to just lay off their whole staff and just get like ChatGPT to write plots for them. That's 100% what's coming next.
That or Hideo Kojima is just...
You'd think they already were.
Yeah.
Hideo Kojima is just going to blow our brains out of our skulls with something.
Did you see the trailer for Death Stranding 2?
No.
Oh my god, guys. Guys, I'm so excited. fucking Higgs from the first one is back, only now he's like a prog rocker, and he has a bright orange electric guitar that's got like a vibro sword edge on it, and he's slashing at people, and I'm like, this is fucking amazing. Fragile has gloves around her throat that like gesticulate, and there's a tiny talking puppet. I'm so excited. Oh my god. It looks so dumb. I love it. I want it now. Sorry.
So Death Stranding meets Fooly Cooly, Kirk?
Yeah, just about. And like even the makeup is just like outrageous, like with the Joker makeup.
Yeah, it's just Joker makeup.
It's Joker makeup.
It's just Joker makeup. Well, and I love it because Erin and I were talking, and I was like, oh, there's a trailer for Death Stranding 2. And she goes, oh, okay, like, do you want to watch it with me? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So we sat down and we started watching it, and she looks down and she's like, why is it 9 minutes, Brent? Like, well, and it's Hideo Kojima, so at the end of it, you know less about the game than you did when the 9 minutes started.
In addition to existential dread.
The first one was pretty tame by comparison with other Kojima things. It wasn't as batshit as some of the Metal Gear stuff. I mean, the carrying around a baby was pretty weird, but it mostly tracked. It had its own logic to it. There's no way he's going to be able...
Had a nude Norman Reedus.
Yes, and where's your objection, Kirk?
Why isn't there... No, my objection is why isn't there another nude Norman Reedus in the second trailer?
If it wasn't there, we would have crowdfunded it.
Yeah. The only way they could make this game better is if there was a second nude Norman Reedus in it. Yeah. But yeah, it was fairly tame by the standards of some of the Metal Gear series. And it's very obvious that now that he's got a little bit of scratch with Kojima Productions and it's doing well, that he's just going to let his fucking freak flag fly, and I'm so here for it. Let's talk real quickly about the games that we're going to be talking about today. These are both run and gun games. That's one of my very favorite genres. And it's a genre that was really popular in the late 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, when, these games both kind of came out. It's sort of epitomized by Contra. I think everybody thinks of the Contra series first and foremost when they think of these games. But I think they really epitomize how differently you can approach this seemingly very simple genre. When you're talking about run and guns with people who aren't really big into these retro games, it can be really hard to not just be like, well, you run to the right and shoot people. Because, I mean, you do run to the right and shoot people, but the difference in the way that Vectorman handles that and the way that Metal Slug handles that, I think is so cool and so interesting. I think it's going to make for some interesting fodder. But I just didn't know if either of you guys had anything you wanted to say about sort of the genre in general, or, is this a style of game that you typically come to?
I would say the main difference is when it comes to, in my mind, a true run and gun is that it's also borderline a rail shooter at the same time, where you really don't have the option to run backwards. It's usually, even though there is platforming like in Contra or whatever, it's still limited to, you still have to run right and shoot, with the exception of Vectorman, even though, yes, it is a run and gun, check the tags. It does list it as a run and gun. It's also a platformer.
Right.
And you can run all the way back to the beginning of the level if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So as far as coming back to it, it really, there's some nuance there.
Absolutely.
Is it a genre I go back to? Well, yeah, but, am I at a local barcade playing zombie, or what's the one, like Terminator 2, or the ones with, the guns that are a true rail shooter?
Yeah.
But then I'm making, that's a distinction of a true rail shooter, but
right.
Or am I at home playing Contra?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So by contrast, it is not a genre I go back to, and I wonder if Vectorman almost would have kind of cemented that for me. I've realized that, platformer is not necessarily, and Kirk, you mentioned it, it is partial, it is a platformer at its core in addition to being the run and gun.
Sure.
It's not my genre, even though I love Vectorman, and it helped form me as, as a gamer, because I, unlike you, Brent, who had a lot of access to like arcades, or maybe that was like your primary access for a while.
Right.
I did not have access, and so I was limited to a very narrow band of titles on a console, which my first console was the Sega Genesis.
Right.
If I'm being honest, it's not my genre because I'm not that good at them. I'm not that good a platformer. I immediately glommed onto the isometric, like the Legend of Zelda's. The things where I have even the illusion of a third dimension to move within, maybe because my reaction time or whatever. So that's kind of an interesting difference, at least for me. But I have to emphasize that it's probably because I'm not that as good. Whereas I've seen Kirk dominate some of these games. Like you have that skill set.
I think a unifying theme of almost all of these games, I mean, like Kirk and I were talking about Cuphead earlier, or Contra, or anything pretty much in that, in that run and gun style, most of them are balls to the wall hard.
Mm-hmm.
They're not meant for real casual play. You do have to, if you're going to be successful in most of these games, you have to get to the point where you have the patterns memorized.
Well, you brought up a good point. Like Cuphead was a great example. Yeah. Like that is a modern day run and gun, but it also suffers from that same rail shooter kind of aspect from it, just like the arcade Terminator 2, where you can't, is that really a run and gun, or is that a full on rail shooter?
Yeah. Where
a lot of the run and guns have that kind of influence of a rail shooter because you can only go really that one direction, whereas at least in Vectorman you can run backwards, and some people might even go as far as saying it's borderline almost Metroidvania, and I know you hate those types of words. But at least in this, where it's a run and gun, if you do run back and try to get a power up or whatever, you're not going to be punished for it.
Right.
So, and it's not, you don't need to do it to complete a level.
Yeah.
You can continue to run and gun to your heart's content and still be able to beat the level. So it's
And Vectorman rewards repeat play and getting to know the levels.
Yeah.
Because if you have the time, it'll reward you going back for those power-ups and like the extra, like the photons, like the extra bits, your score will increase substantially.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to reward that kind of play, whereas like you don't have that luxury in a true pure to form run and gun where like the left side of the screen is going to drag you along.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kirk, do you want to introduce Vectorman and tell us a little bit about the release info for that?
Oh, yeah. Well, Vectorman came out 1995 for the Sega Genesis. It was developed by Blue Sky Software, and I remember it when I was a kid, how they had advertisements for this fucking game everywhere. They had like a big, I don't know the exact amount, but it was like $50,000 or something.
Right.
And it's like, oh, if you play the game, they had like this whole play to win thing where you could win money. I mean, it's always fascinating. Like, does anyone actually ever win that money? Probably not.
God, no.
But this game, as part of just its own advertising, was, oh, not only do you get to play this awesome game, and it is an awesome game,
yes,
you could win money. But they like shoved that down your throat when it came out. Do you guys remember the same advertisements at all?
I don't remember the play to win thing, but I do remember the Funko Land had like a big 6-foot-tall standee of Vectorman.
Yep.
I really love how even the box art of Vectorman, they wanted to get that Mega Man influence, that really shitty, just looks nothing like the actual character kind of look, almost in the same damn pose.
I didn't know about that promotional thing, the cash prize or whatever.
Right.
Until last night, I was kind of going back over this a little bit, and it's on the box. It's like part of the box art. They're like, win. I think it was 25,000.
Yeah.
It was like win 25 grand. They really dumped some marketing money into this thing.
Did you like the Mega Man-esque, like how he has like a mouth and eyes and stuff?
Yeah.
They like completely abandoned on the box art for Vectorman 2. Actually drew him out to look like what he looks like in the game, but I really love just how it was supposed to be kind of like a modern Mega Man, but honestly a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I just love how they made that choice, but at the same time, that kind of alienates a newer audience because it's like, who the hell is going to get that reference? Who's picking up this game?
Well, and also, like, if we're talking of games whose box art you want to emulate, the original Mega Man is not very far up that list.
But we all know about it.
It's the derpiest looking. Like, he just looks so. It's like the guy from like Love Island or whatever with Ricardo Montalban, like the little guy. Like, if they dressed him up in the spacesuit from like a really bad episode of Star Trek and then posed him, like that's what the original Mega Man NES box art looks like. And wanting to emulate that shows either really bad taste or undiagnosed mental illness.
Well, it shows how seriously they took the marketing of these products at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't until, probably a decade after this game came out that the industry and all other industries realized that it was the equivalent of the movie industry in terms of money and production.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the plot of Vectorman.
Here we go.
Okay, hang on. I want to read this. The game takes place in a future where the Earth had been largely destroyed by humans through pollution. Humanity temporarily migrates to distant outer space while they leave Orbots, a portmanteau of orbs and robots, to clean up the planet while they're away. Raster, one of the higher-level supervisory robots, is accidentally connected to a nuclear warhead missile, which radically alters his behavior, transforming him into a tyrannical overlord, now known by the name Warhead. He gains control of all robots and plans to declare war on humanity. One robot, Vectorman, had been off on a mission in outer space, does not fall under his control, and upon seeing what is happening, decides to put a stop to Warhead's plan. So my question is, when y'all saw Wall-E, were you pissed? They fucking stole the plot to my game.
Or if anything, Wall-E stole from Vectorman, because Vectorman, as they do explain, like in the second game, he is kind of like a janitor.
Yeah, well, no, that's what I was saying.
He drives like a trash barge.
The opposite of that. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, no, this has become a running joke because for fucking Kirby's Dream Course, I went and looked up the manual, and there's like a full ass plot.
Some copywriter got paid like a salary to write a thing that almost no one's ever experienced.
Yes.
Well, it was such a weird time in gaming too, because you're at that cusp of like full-on voice acting being a regular thing where they could convey the plot themselves without having to put it in a manual.
Right.
So the whole plot of Vectorman is obviously insane.
Right.
But it's like you have to condense down the plot of an entire game into one tiny manual.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. For it, man. No, I loved the fact that there was voice acting in this game.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, not much, but like, I loved it because, like, with it being a Sega Genesis release, not a Sega CD release, but just a regular Sega Genesis cartridge, the fact that they were able to get any kind of voice samples out of the Genesis sound chip, I was really impressed by. I was like, and it actually sounds pretty good. And I love that they give him like a badass Bart Simpson kind of attitude too. Like, he's like, yeah, like, back on.
Considering all of the content that they managed to get on screen, like the particle effects, some light physics, and just like a lot of pretty good sprite animations. Like, it's amazing that any given Sega Genesis doesn't melt down on the spot sometimes.
Yeah.
Should probably talk about gameplay.
Yeah. At some point, we should probably talk about how the game plays. Do either of you guys want to take it, since it's not my game?
Well, we talked about earlier how I really wanted to drive the point home how every run and gun kind of suffers. They all follow kind of the rail shooter kind of formula at the same time, where Vectorman takes away from that.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the gameplay comes in, where even though you're running and gunning, you can still go back. You can check an area where it's just like, oh yeah, well, I had the opportunity to go a different direction before. I'm going to go back and I'm going to explore that area.
Right.
So it does have a lot of more of the platforming aspect that what you would see in comparative to a normal run and gun.
Yeah.
But it is not the driving mechanic overall, because there are some levels that it really is just running to the right, where you don't get a lot of the extra, oh, well, I can go this direction or that direction or whatever.
Yeah.
Some levels are still just like a traditional run and gun. It's, even though you can run back, like, why the hell would you? Your chances of missing it is going to be pretty slim anyways. But the gameplay typically revolves around just, your standard run and gun with a little extra. You can get power-ups in the first game by, blowing up the TVs, which was really fun. I like the sound that it makes when you shoot the TV. It's like almost like a sneaker hitting a gym floor sound when you're shooting the TV screens.
And the way they start spinning around.
Yeah, and they spin faster and faster and faster.
Yep.
And then because he's an orbot, so it's a collection of orbs. Some of those TVs will have like morphing abilities where your guy will take the form of like a fish or a rocket.
The drill's so fun.
Or like a golf cart buggy thing. There's a whole bunch, and that's really creative because it shows like it has like obviously a Transformer-esque kind of thing, but it also makes sense because with him being like a detached group of balls, he can do all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Detached balls. That's what I got.
Oh, detachable penis.
Yes, and that falls heavy into the gameplay because a lot of those power-ups you need to use to get into certain parts of the level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where usually you can always tell there's something around when you find one of those morphing abilities when you're going along through the game. It's like there's something hidden somewhere because it wouldn't just give me this ability for no fucking reason.
Right.
And that ties into a lot of the gameplay. Other than that, you get your back to the run and gun style. You get like spread shot and machine guns and all sorts of cool stuff like you would get in Contra or Cuphead or whatever.
Sure.
So it has that similarity there.
Mm-hmm.
That just kind of ties in well with everything else.
Yeah, and that spread shot was necessary.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I noticed about this game, so it made me think of Castlevania, because there's a lot, the first one. And I think actually there's an interesting comparison with this one, the first Castlevania versus Super Castlevania 4, and Vectorman versus Metal Slug. And what I mean by that is, in the original Castlevania, Simon Belmont's whip is just left and just right. And so as you're playing through the game, particularly if you don't have a secondary weapon, you have to memorize where a lot of the baddies are and figure out how you're going to move your sprite tactically to be able to attack them. Vectorman has 8 directional shooting. There's a lot of enemy placement where when you first come onto a particular screen, you're not going to be able to hit that enemy with the normal shot. And so the spread shot makes that super easy, but there's a lot of this game where you can't really run and gun. You have to kind of walk and gun. You have to play it with a more conservative strategy like you would in something like a Castlevania or a Ghouls and Ghosts, rather than just balls to the wall as fast as I can to the exit.
Yeah, there's a tentative approach that you have to take sometimes. Yeah. Like it may be the 4th or 5th level. Mm-hmm. It's fairly early where they're introducing mechanics pretty aggressively that they want you to experience and start traversing directions other than left and right. So like the one of the early levels is a vertical level underwater.
Yes.
Where I think they even call it zero gravity, but it's pretty
absolute zero, I think.
Is it? Okay, yeah. There's a couple of those, but you effectively have lower gravity. Like your jumps are higher. Mm. And there are underwater mines, but also these jellyfish type things with like these bubble tails that will whip out and snap you.
Yes.
But you're traversing upward and you don't have a lot of warning. So you have to, with this particular game as well, you have a double jump, which you have to utilize.
Yes.
And you're going to, not only does it feel good to use the double jump. But,
oh my God. But the double jump feels amazing.
But during that particular
double jumps of all.
Yeah.
The double jump in my mind is also the best weapon in the game. It sounds cool. It's sound effect, but it's also a hell of a weapon. I love how the double jump, because a lot of games where double jumps are just inherent and just an ability that most games just have now. In Vectorman, it's a weapon too. If you time it just right and you get good enough at it, you can one hit kill just about everything with the double jump, and I love it.
The little like robotic electronic zoop sound as he does it. But you have to learn to moderate your usage of it a little bit during that level, because you're going to jam yourself right up the ass of these jellyfish in that particular level. So you do have to be a little bit tentative and strategize and find maybe a different route if it's not, maybe you're down on health and that thing is, you don't have that good vantage. You can't, you have 8 directional shooting and he's between 2 of the directions and you don't have the spread shot, then you have to make a decision, but you're not being forced by a leftward moving screen. You make the decision on your own.
Yeah. And that, to Kirk's point, I think that's one of the strengths of this game, is because in a lot of other games that punish fast play, that punish you just blazing straight ahead, if you get yourself too far to the right, you're fucked, because you'll wind up in a situation. So like my comparison for this game, more than even any other run and gun, was Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and maybe part of it was the double jump, because I just love anything with a double jump. But in Super Ghouls and Ghosts, there's a lot of times where you have to know where the enemy's coming up in order to prevent too many projectiles from coming at you all at once. You have to know exactly when to stop to take on enemy 1, but before enemy 2 has gotten into view. Vectorman, because you can back up, that's not an issue. But yeah, so that was something I really appreciated about this game, is that it gave you a little bit more freedom than a lot of other run and guns, and it gave you an opportunity to kind of find your own approach to playing it more than some games, including the game we're going to be talking about here in a moment. Do we want to talk about sound at all? Because that was one of my favorite parts of this game. Particularly, I really liked the level 1 music, which most of the tracks in this get used on at least 2 levels. But there are enough levels in the game that it doesn't feel super repetitive. But the level 1 music, I was absolutely convinced that they were going to have like somebody cut in and go, "Fighting out of outer space, Vectorman, 800 pounds." It has that like wrestler intro music vibe to it.
The hype music.
Yes, and it just made me so happy.
It's very, very upbeat and very fast.
Yeah. But just the whole the sound font and the music for this was just such a snapshot of its time. It was so like early to mid 90s techno.
Yeah. No, I like the sound of just his blaster, the gun it's so satisfying, and you can spam it and it just it's a very tactile, textural sound, and you almost need that, in the days before like rumble.
Yes.
Before vibration built into controllers, the haptic feedback, your haptics are primarily auditory at that time. You can feel his jump, and I mentioned it earlier, but like you can feel the thrust on the double jump and the blast from his literal hand cannon.
Yeah. Well, and any of these games where so much of it is blowing things up, like, it sounds so stupid to say, but you have to have satisfying explosion noises. When you consider how often in a game, like what percentage of the total runtime of the game, you're going to be hearing the double jump noise or the explosion noise, it's really important that they're good, because you're going to be hearing them almost as much, if not more, than the music. Mm-hmm. And so this had such a visceral... It leaned on the strengths of the Genesis sound chip, which the Genesis sound chip often gets shit. It's not great at everything, but it has that grit and that bass, and it has that earthiness that really played into what they were wanting to do with the sound effects and the music in this. I mean, it's kind of like the Streets of Rage series. Like, those games feel really visceral and real. And when you land a punch, you almost like feel it through the TV, because that the sound effects have that like that little bit of distortion from the FM synth in the Genesis sound chip, and it kicks ass. Like, that's something that the Genesis did better than the Super Nintendo, which was much more, although that sound chip is fantastic, and I think makes better music.
It's kind of a desirable level of lo-fi.
Yes. It has more distortion in it, and I think that they played to the strengths of their hardware in this game a lot.
Yeah, especially since you're dealing with robots where that particular kind of raspier sound makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then they were able to add their own little charm to it too. Like, mm-hmm. I loved it when you get hit, how his sound effects would randomly change from like masculine to feminine sounding. Mm-hmm. And just like so I loved it. It was so good. Some were like very like, but it would just and that really came across and to what you're saying about the chip, like it really just added to that.
Yes.
It just made it that much better.
It builds his character.
Yeah.
I love I think it's when he gets a power up, he yells, "I'm rockin'." Yeah, I'm rockin'. And it's like, and it's pretty low in the mix. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not looking for it, because the music is like thumping and high in the mix in the game. But like, he'll just go, "I'm rockin'," and I'm like, yes. It reminded me of fucking Bubsy.
Yeah.
With the talk about a bridge too short or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm rocking," or "All right," or I think "All right" is a
yeah.
Those are really good, and he gets more vocal in the second game too.
Yeah.
And then he starts making obscure references to games that are 20 years old at that point. And it's like, who the hell is playing this game that would know that reference? Like,
right.
in specific, in his Vectorman voice, will say full sentences, and this he'll say, "Chicken, fight like a robot," which is a reference to a 1980s game called Berserk. It's like,
oh god,
no kid playing this game is gonna know that, but it added to the charm to just his character, and I still know that phrase to this day. And then I loved it so much I had to research where that even came from to begin with. Well, but that's just a credit to the sound design, and then just fleshing him out even more, along with the the getting hit and the random sounds, but then also enemies dying are great sounds, or whatever that is, like that like it almost sounds like someone's yelling through a paper tube.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, when it comes to run and guns, because there's so much action and so much noise going around, mm-hmm. music, or at least the soundtrack, takes a back seat. Mm-hmm. This is not like really super apparent in Vectorman, but it does suffer from that at the same time. The music it has is very good, but it wasn't really meant to be complicated enough where you stop and actually go back and revisit it. Sure. I mean, I still have my favorite track. It's the level Arctic Ridge.
Okay.
Like, it starts with almost like that kind of distorted, like Radio Man going.
Yeah.
Then it sounds like like that. I love it. But unfortunately, once the action gets started, it, you don't get to hear it anymore.
Right.
And that's kind of like every level where when you first start, you get to kind of hear the music, but then the shooting and the jumping happens, and
yeah, and you're white knuckling your controller, and you're not really paying attention.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this was my first time going through it. I mean, because I wasn't a Genesis kid. It was something that I was aware of, but really ever dove into it. I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was super fun. I liked the open level design. I thought was to its benefit in terms of just doing something different with the run and gun genre. I liked the fact that it was a little bit more strategic than some other games. I thought the music was cool. I don't particularly care for that pre-rendered graphic look, maybe because I still have PTSD over Balls 3D, but so maybe I just have a little bit of PTSD over seeing pre-rendered Balls, but I thought this was a really, really fun game, and if you like this genre, I would definitely recommend it.
It stands out in my memory. I think this is a good title for me based on the title of your podcast, right. Like the games that made us. This is an entry that is kind of formative for me in my memory in terms of like style and substance. And the gameplay is solid, it's fun, but I can almost draw lines back in time in my life to elements from this game that like that map to it, like the kind of like the future, kind of a charming future punk kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it is a charming game in addition to having some gritty gameplay and some good design decisions all around and some flaws. You can not play the game for a second and draw things from it. Like if you go all the way to one side of the screen or another, or to an object like a wall, and let Vectorman lean against it, he'll just lean and chill like the fawns. Arm against the wall. Or if you're just letting him stand, his sprite is not static.
Right.
His main 3D ball, his main rendered ball, migrates down into a beer gut, and he pulls it back up to be his chest piece, and it's just.
I really liked too when he'd like get up to the edge of a cliff, and he'd start doing that. Oh.
And he'd windmill his arms as he tries not to fall off the ledge.
Or he'll start making the balls jump back and forth in his arms. Idle animation, like he's just knocking them back and forth. Yeah.
It's so charming.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning, like you boot the game and it gets through the blue sky splash screen.
Right.
And then you immediately get to a Sega logo, and you can actually play with Vectorman and jump around. You can interact with the Sega logo.
What?
Yeah, the game starts on a mini game.
I didn't know that. I just clicked through. Oh, shit.
There's a hidden TV in there, too, that you can blow up. And you get like a super weapon. You can like blow up the Sega logo.
Well, thank God it's not a Super Nintendo game, or I would have missed a core game mechanic.
Yeah.
I guess that's... I was fortunate to have picked a game that was equal parts style and substance because I was a dumb little shit. I didn't have the wherewithal to know quality from trash. So I consider it a fortunate accident.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, I really enjoyed it. That said, it did not displace my all-time favorite run and gun series, which is Metal Slug, we're going to talk about the first entry today. Metal Slug is a 1996 run and gun developed by Nazca Corporation, who you may remember from our Neo Turf Masters episode, was a group of developers who broke off from IRM to start developing games for the Neo Geo console and arcade system. This is a balls to the wall classic arcade run and gun that spawned a series of, I think it's 9 mainline entries, and then I don't know, 6 or 7 other games, including the inevitable for any Japanese company, the inevitable horrible attempt to convert it to 3D that everybody agrees was a terrible mistake, and then they just went back to 2D like they should have done in the beginning. Those developers, the guys that had worked on IREM, who started Nazca, when they spun off, the last games that they had been working for IREM were these series of kind of obscure shooters and run and guns for IREM. There was Gun Force 2, In the Hunt, and I think the other one is Armed Police Batrider. Hey guys, Future Brent here. Just a quick editor's note. I said Armed Police Batrider here. The game that I was actually thinking of is Gallop Armed Police Unit. They're both arcade shooters from this era, but Armed Police Unit is the one that the IREM people worked on. So back to the regularly scheduled show. But they all came out within a couple of years, and they all have this same weird, like, chibi art style that Metal Slug has, with like the tiny tanks and the like super cute weaponry and the weird incongruent jazzy soundtrack that really has no place being in something with this much violence. And it's so fun to watch, to play through those games. And then you get to Metal Slug and you get this just orgy of violence between these like cute little chibi sprites with big stupid grins on their faces, as the like weird jazzy Neo Turf Masters soundtrack plays in the background. And I remember being in an arcade in like 96, 97 and seeing that big giant red Neo Geo cabinet, and normally everybody was over there playing King of Fighters or Samurai Showdown or something that I was really fucking bad at. And all of a sudden I see Marco Rossi, the little guy with the blonde hair in Metal Slug, running to the right and shooting everything, and hearing that "Yarr!" scream from the bad guys, and I was like, okay, this is a game I must know about. But yeah, this game has a plot in heavy air quotes as well, where you are either Marco Rossi or Tarma Roving. The series, as it expands, continues to add more characters, including later on they start adding characters from King of Fighters, which is really strange. But you are members of the Peregrine Falcon Strike Force, who are trying to hunt down this evil general who's trying to take over the world. He's got a giant, muscular sidekick who just mains a fucking M40 machine gun and just blasts it in the air while laughing shirtless at you.
Oh, yeah. Clearly a Rambo kind of, well, not rip off, but definitely Rambo inspired.
Dude, with Metal Slug we just say rip off.
Okay. But no, he would always say, "Come on, boy." I would laugh so fucking hard every time he would do that.
With that color palette and like the art style, like it's absolutely, it's chibi. Yeah. Like it's very much like from that previous era. Yes. In the 10 years before, like your Rambo, like your First Blood and your like Predator's a great one where like you've got this jungle aesthetic, jungle warfare aesthetic.
Yeah, you're running around, you're trying to take out this big bad guy who, in a surprising plot twist, the evil general who's trying to destroy the world is Canadian, which I always really liked. I often wonder if like what they saw in the heart and soul of the Canadian, that they thought that was where the next great fascist leader was going to come from. In terms of its plot structure, it is very much a ripoff of all those like classic 80s action movies that you were mentioning. And it kind of has that same energy and vibe to it too, because one of the things that really drew me to this was a lot of the early run and guns, games like Contra, they didn't really have much of a sense of humor. They didn't have much joy to them. It was just kind of, yeah, we're going to kill the bad guys. This game is so goofy and over the top that it feels more like a parody of those 80s action movies.
You know, there was a time where prior to this, let's just say this decade in gaming, where we almost see like a revival or resurgence in enthusiasm for gaming, although it would not be for another decade or so before it would really reach the peak of where it was in the early 80s.
Right.
But prior to this, there was absolutely a kind of a cynicism to game development, like where like any idiot with a computer and a COBOL programming book could. I don't even know what they were writing their code in at the time. I just picked a language that
I've got to imagine it was all in assembly at that point.
Some of it, I'm sure some of it was in a higher language too, but I just picked one that flaked off the outside of my brain. But like there was such a cynicism in game.
Do we need to get you a bandage for that?
You know, just ignore the cerebrospinal fluid. It's fine.
Okay, yeah. Good deal.
It's like, and it goes back to like even the E.T. game debacle and like like Buried in the Desert. Like we don't have to go over the history. Like look that up. It's fucking hilarious. But like they absolutely flood the market with cheap, terrible games, and it kind of, in my mind, it kind of is like that. Like there's not a lot of heart in the game. Not only do they not have a sense of humor, but you don't even have to be funny to understand your game and you're delivering an experience.
Yeah, and this I feel like there's a lot of love that was clearly put into this game and the series. One of the things that the Neo Geo did really well was it was capable of pushing a lot of frames of animation for the sprites. So you got a lot of fluidity, but it also allowed for a lot of characterization. And that's kind of what we were talking about with Vectorman. Like there were a lot of things in Vectorman that they were doing with little characterization that they didn't necessarily need to do. You didn't have to have that level of detail where he props his elbow up on the wall. That was just a for fun thing, but it builds that characterization. And when it's the player avatar that you're adding that level of characterization to, that's really meaningful because it makes it more fun for you to play as that character. And the level of goofy detail in the animation in Metal Slug is incredible. One of my favorite things is every character has like a oh shit scream and put their hands on their head animation, including your characters. It's like stuff will happen and your big bad, like regardless of whether you're playing as Marco or Tarma, your big badass characters will like throw their hands up on their head and go, oh my God! And like you can see the like fear in their eyes. Just the level of characterization that they put in it makes it so much more fun. To talk about the gameplay a little bit, one of the core, because we can kind of tie that back in there, one of the core things that you're trying to do, other than just kill everybody, is you're trying to capture or presumably free the prisoners of the Peregrine Falcon Strike team from the clutches of the bad guys. And so what that means is that there's blonde homeless men who are tied up on trees everywhere, and then you shoot at them and they fall down, and then they run over to you, give you a big thumbs up, hand you a power up, and then run away with their hands over their heads like a little girl screaming as they run off into the distance.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things of the entire game was just, well, they're recaptured prisoners, remember?
Right.
Which was, the wording was so fucking weird.
It's
at the
so
end of the level, I'm like,
ominous.
don't you mean rescued prisoners? Like,
that's why they run away.
Like, were these originally your prisoners, and then someone took your prisoners, and then you're taking them back? So, but Nazca I've found has kind of had that happen with a lot of their games. Like we talked about how in Neo Turf Masters, how they use a lot of weird language and extra words for no reason. So this one, recaptured prisoners, I was just like,
what's going on here?
And like the rescue prisoners, so you have to shoot at them to undo their binds, which fair enough.
Yeah.
And then they kind of wander the stage. Now, when I first played through, I didn't know you actually have to like touch them to rescue them.
Yeah.
Like shooting them just doesn't rescue them.
Yeah.
You have to then like go to whatever platform and they'll try to
around.
Yeah.
They
skip.
High heel skip.
They straight up skip around the battlefield.
We have to recapture them.
Right.
Clearly
they're weird.
They're on the lam.
Yeah.
So, but then you have to go touch them, and then the whole animation that they do when they give you this power up is still perplexing to me.
Yeah.
Because it looks like they're just whipping out a pair of just fucking bell-bottom pants out of nowhere.
Yes.
And they're just like, check my shit out! And then they drop the power up, tuck the pants away into whatever POW garb they're already wearing.
Yeah.
And then they run away screaming, flailing their arms. Yep. Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But, like, oh my god. That's like, that was my favorite part of the whole game, was just the bizarreness of the recaptured prisoners. Yeah. Oh, like, yeah, maybe they do need to be prisoners. I don't think these people are mentally stable.
Yeah. And the level of animation detail of the enemies too. When you shoot at them, they have time to like go, oh no, and put their hands on their head. Or like they'll get shot and they'll grab wherever they got shot. And it's like the detail in this, because this is all sprite work. None of this is, 3D like rigging. This is all, every frame of animation is drawn, and it's insane. Continuing talking about gameplay a little bit, the other thing that you're trying to recapture, and this word actually would make sense with this, unlike the prisoners, is the metal slugs. So the name of the game comes from these tanks that the good guys originally had, and then they were captured by the bad guys. And so part of your mission is to try and recapture all of these tanks, which are called metal slugs. Which is why the full name of the original game is actually Metal Slug Super Vehicle 001, because it's the name of that tank that you're getting. Boy, it's one of these things. I love this game. This game is so much fun, but I'm fighting myself to not talk about the games that come after this, because as the series progresses, you wind up having more vehicles like this. The way it works is you'll be running along and you'll see the little tank, and it'll have an arrow pointing down at the turret, and it'll say like jump in. And if you land on top of the tank, the hatch will close, and then instead of you being you're piloting the tank. And so you can fire the laser cannon that's on the back of it, or the big main gun. Or, and this is my favorite part, you can push down on the joystick, and the tank like hides its head like it's a turtle, and then you can throw your grenades out of the top of the tank, and the tank looks scared, and it's amazing. Like, just why? What?
Anthropomorphic war gear.
You can kamikaze the tank too. Don't forget about that.
Oh yeah. You can get it to where it's gonna blow up, and then roll it up to whatever you're about to destroy and jump out.
Yeah.
The other main mechanic that you're gonna run into is the loadout, because this game has an absurd number of different weapons, and again, as the series rolls along, it gets even dumber. When you start out with a limited number of grenades, and you start out with an unlimited number of handgun shells. So you can fire your handgun as many times as you want. Ammo's not an issue. But every other pickup that you could get, there's a rocket launcher, there's see, I almost said it weird like the announcer does. I almost did rocket launcher. Mm-hmm. There's a rocket launcher, there's a machine gun, there's a laser, there's what else? See, again, I'm getting confused as to which game, because I know you can get double machine guns, but I think that's in a later game. There's a shotgun. Oh, the flame shot. The flame shot is badass, because the flame shot, it's literally like you're shooting a wall of flame up at people. It shoots a giant cone of flame at people. And there's a part in the second level where there's a group of enemy soldiers who are parachuting down at you. And if you rescued the prisoner right before then, you'll get the flame shot, and you can aim up and fire these cones of flame up at them, and they light on fire and burn and scream. It's basically the Wilhelm scream. Like, they go, ow! And then as they light on fire, you can actually see, you can just make out that the strings on their parachutes burn up and detach, and then their bodies slam into the ground. It's amazing. When I was, 9 when this game came out? So if you picture just little 9-year-old Brent just sitting there hooting and hollering and pulling more quarters out of my pants to be able to light guys on fire and watch them crush themselves on the ground. It's good times.
That's a spectacular level of detail, attention to detail that in a sprite-based, pixel-driven game, you don't have to do that. They chose to include that level of detail. That's
absolutely,
and fleshes out the experience.
And that's something that I love about Nazca, because like when we talked about Neo Turf Masters, the drive animation, the actual like hitting the golf ball animation for each of the characters has so many frames of animation in it that it gets almost like uncanny valley smooth, to where you're kind of sitting there going, is this sprite-based animation or is this mocap? And it's like, well, this is a 1995 game. It's not mocap. But there's so much of that in all of their games, where the sprite artists that worked for Nazca in the mid-90s were right at the very top of the pyramid in terms of their skill, and it really, really shows in this game as well.
I don't think sprite animation and 8 and 16-bit animation is necessarily underappreciated today, because there's still a lot of games produced in those styles, but it would be easy for a person to look at 3D animation and the advanced textures and like all of the fidelity that our modern graphics processes are capable of, and say this is superior by far. But I think about walk cycles sometimes when I play these older games, and I just think about like how much skill it took to understand the in-betweening, if any of us here have done animation, like the in-betweening, because you're not actually animating them, you're predicting the frames needed to emulate that motion with those sprites. And so like I think about like a walk cycle for a 2D character, a 2D pixel sprite.
Yeah.
And it's a skill set that I almost can't imagine, because you're taking a real thing, you're abstracting it 2 pixels, but then you have to de-abstract it a little bit to animate it and make it believable. Even if it's not realistic, it has to be fluid, so I think that's an amazing skill set.
Yeah.
Brent, real quick, earlier I mentioned that there was like a kamikaze attack, and you had made the reference like, yeah, you can drive the tank and then jump out of it.
Oh no!
And then it blows up. Do you want to elaborate on that? Like maybe, like, is that the kamikaze attack to you?
Oh no!
Oh, no. Okay, so
motherfucker,
Metal Slug. Usually you use it when it's taken enough damage. I believe you press A and B at the exact same time, and what your character will do is jump out, like kind of eject out of the tank, and the tank will automatically drive forward and like forcibly explode.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to like drive it over to where you were saying before, like because it will take like when the tank gets to a certain point, it'll explode. But like there's an actual kamikaze attack.
Okay, all right, that's okay. I'm fine with that. That's fine. Okay, so that's not. I was worried that you were gonna be like, yeah. So actually, in Metal Slug, there are these guys that you can see, like you can visit in each of the levels. But you had me
concerned because you're like, oh, you drive the tank over, and then you can hop out, and then it explodes. But it's like you don't even need to do that.
I'm gonna be out. No, like, I did just learn.
You can do the equivalent of just dropping like a center block on the gas pedal and jump out of the son bitch.
That I didn't know. No, I didn't know that. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, but you had me scared for a minute. I was like, fuck, am I like?
But that's still something you don't know. You're a dumb bitch, aren't you?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Why does this keep happening?
Oh, fuck. Okay, but it's not as bad as in Legend of the Mystical Ninja, where it's like a whole mechanic.
No.
It's just you can keep it going. So, like, okay, so you hit...
So that's why I've been, like, quiet this whole time. I was over here double-checking myself to make sure I wasn't going crazy. And I'm like, so Brent said he'd drive the tank over, like, before it, naturally will explode if it takes enough damage.
Right.
Like, is that what I heard him say? What the kamikaze attack is?
When you jump out, you still have some control over the tank?
No, it just drives straight forward on its own.
Okay.
And then it makes you invincible temporarily, or like.
But it does that when you jump out anyway. Like that's.
But like it forcibly just drives directly forward. It is the equivalent of just dropping a brick on the gas pedal and letting it go.
So you're holding down like
A and B,
and then I assume like analog stick right?
No.
Fire. No, I didn't know that.
Like I had to make sure I wasn't going crazy, so I went ahead and looked up the controls, and I did find it right here. A and B, Metal Slug, self-destruct attack.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would always just as the tank was about. Well, see, I never got to that point because as the tank would like be getting ready to blow up, I'd just drive it to where it was gonna blow up in their face and then jump out.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but okay. Motherfucker, Kirk.
Because I was like, I'm pretty sure I did that to help beat a boss. Like he was kicking the hell out of the tank, and it like the how to play even references the attack. So I'm like, all right, well,
it does?
I'm pretty sure it does.
Oh, God.
Because that's how I learned it.
Well, yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Motherfucker.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to self-destruct this bitch, and it's going to eject me, so that way when the tank is flying forward to hit the boss, I'm just going to start shooting and throwing my bombs at him or whatever.
Well, at least the streak of it just being Super Nintendo games that I don't know anything about is broken. So that's cool.
Oh,
now it's Super Nintendo and Neo Geo. All right, so now it's just games that made us podcast, nothing but old PC games.
The games that made us that Brent didn't know how to play. Just change it to the controls I never figured out.
The controls I didn't know.
The controls I didn't know.
Well, welcome to the Didn't Read the Manual podcast. I'm Brent.
I have expected, like, let's go back and talk about Vectorman again so Brent can be like, you can fucking double jump?
Okay. Now, hey.
I'm exaggerating.
In fairness, I always push all the buttons. Not all at the same time, obviously. But...
Oh, God.
Oh.
That's what you think. I was so fucking quiet for like 15 minutes.
I was scared.
I was scared. I'm like, no.
Oh.
No. Brent. Poor Brent.
Poor Brent. I knew it. I knew you were being too fucking quiet. I was like, this is bad. This is gonna wind up being.
Did you see me over here fucking around on my phone? I'm like, did I do something wrong, or did I just imagine that?
No.
Like,
well, and I like that your first instinct is it's like, Well, it did what I wanted it to do. Did I fuck up?
Well, because I kind of have an issue with the control in this game anyways, because the turret on the tank is also locked to going left and right, and that really fucking annoys me. So maybe I'm like, well, maybe after I jumped out, it was just kind of driving right on its own.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is one of the few, because this game, I feel like controls really tight. Mm-hmm. Really tight, really responsive. You know, like there's things you have to do in this game when the attack helicopters come in, which happens a couple times in the game, and they're dropping bombs on you. And you have to stand directly under it, wait for the bombs to come down, and then dodge just slightly left or just slightly right. If the controls in this weren't fine-tuned enough, or like in level 2 when there's the tank that drops the bombs directly down on you, or the shells directly down on you, like if the controls weren't pretty tight, that would be a problem. But using the laser cannon on the Metal Slug, having that tied to the same, I don't know how else they could have done it though, because they
didn't have like multiple analog sticks,
right?
So it's totally forgivable. But I can still bitch about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it's a pain in the ass. Yeah, I don't know how else they would have done it, but it does.
Or maybe they well, at least on the Neo Geo, if you look at the control scheme, there is a button that's not used. So maybe like you press and hold that button, and then you can swing that independently, or of driving left or right, which would have been cool. But again, like
because
it doesn't break the game, so it's just something for me to bitch about. You know, now I'm just gonna have to start making up special moves and shit.
That's like
just to psych you out
100%
and just be like just 100% wrong, because at this point, like, my win-loss ratio is just on it, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
you didn't know about the Hadouken move in Super Mario World, you fucking bitch.
When we talk about fear, hey, what'd you think of the bullet time? The fuck are you talking about, Kirk?
Welcome to Gaslighting Brent with Kirk.
Oh, I love you so much. I'm gonna hug you after we get done recording.
All right, well, the only other thing that I wanted to talk briefly about is the sound. This series has, to me, really iconic music. I think the standout for me is Metal Slug 2 / Metal Slug X. Pretty much the same soundtrack because they are the same game. I won't get into that right now because we'll probably wind up covering Metal Slug X at some point. But just like Neo Turf Masters, this game's soundtrack is really jazzy in a really strange way. They use the same sound font for this that they did for Neo Turf Masters. Nazca does for all their games, which is really strange going back to Neo Turf Masters and hearing what I think of as the Metal Slug sound font while I'm like putting. I'm like, wait, where are all the people like exploding and burning and you know, buildings exploding with bananas flying everywhere for reasons that no one has yet figured out. But just like in we were talking about with Vectorman, I feel like the sound design in this is so solid. It adds so much to the characterization. I love the fact that the bosses laugh at you, like they do the little and it's little touches like that give it that feel. It has that really satisfying like explosion sound, that really satisfying like bullet crunching into a person sound. The sound design really feels tuned in to make you feel powerful, because this game makes you feel really powerful. I also love, and I didn't mention this, I was going to, should have written it down, but one of the things that I was getting at with Vectorman in terms of the shooting only being in 8 directions is with Metal Slug, with the machine gun, you can spray arcs. Mm-hmm. And that's just excellent. Oh my God, there's nothing better than just being able to like jump and midway through your jump, hit the fire button and then fling the joystick in a half moon and just kill everything on screen all at once. And it's fantastic. But
that's sexy.
Yeah. Oh, it's so nice. But yeah, I didn't know if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being able to use the machine gun in that fashion too, or really most of the guns.
Yeah.
The shotgun, that was a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
When I first picked up the flamethrower, it was the first time I really experienced like the first sound effect where
I thought you were going to say an erection.
No, but like
when I picked up the flamethrower, it was the first time that I saw the face of God.
The death sound, they Jesus. The death sound when you use the flamethrower for the first time, they really go for it. Whoever recorded it, it's just like, ow! Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And like Pam walked into the fucking computer room, into our office, and was just like, "What are you playing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you don't notice it as much in the North American version of the ROM because they make it sweat. It's kind of like the Ocarina of Time thing where Ganon bleeds green. Mm-hmm. But in the Japanese version of the ROM, there's blood just flying everywhere. Everybody's just got like gushers of bright red blood all over everywhere. Later on in the series, there's also these zombies that vomit projectile zombification goo from across the playfield, and it's purple. They're landing on people who are dying and then gushing red blood. And then if you become a zombie, you can fire this like cannon of zombification purple goo.
Oh God.
That like blasts across the whole screen, and it by default always starts from 15 degrees below center all the way to the top. So it's just and everything on the screen dies.
No, I've been playing like the Neo Geo CD versions.
Yeah.
I didn't have like the blood everywhere, at least as you're describing it. It was more like they would have blood markers on them as they were dying and going through their death animation, but I didn't have like the blood flying everywhere.
I don't know if the CD version is toned down from the arcade version. I wouldn't be shocked if it was.
Yeah. I still had like the people with the flamethrower like cooked alive.
Oh yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Much shorter game than I was expecting too. I didn't.
Yeah.
It took me like
it's breezy.
45 minutes to an hour to.
But you got to think it's an arcade game. Like people were, this is something that you'd want to be able to beat on a buck in quarters. If not many people are going to stand at an arcade machine for much more than that.
Yeah, and it was you were talking about the music, but one of my notes, and you can check our notes.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, like I would love to go back and revisit and just listen to it without all the constant sound effects. But when I played, like, and maybe it was the version I was playing, it was very loud when it came to the sound effects.
Yeah.
And, like death animations, all of the projectiles, the explosions were just insane. So I wonder if it was like an arcade type where those were meant to be very boisterous and very loud. But I don't remember any of the music because there was so much shit going on all the time. I couldn't tell you I couldn't even narrow down the tune, like a 2-second tune of any of the songs in the game.
Maybe it's a codec thing or something for the emulator too.
Could be.
But I don't consider that a bad thing. I even put that on my notes where that just shows you how much action there is in the game. There's so much action, you can't hear the music a lot of times, at least in my case, even if you tried.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a just an incredible. There's a podcast I listen to pretty religiously called Retro Warriors, and they were talking about this game, and somebody mentioned the similarities with Contra, and I love it because the one guy was like, yeah, I just don't know why I'd ever play Contra when Metal Slug's on offer, and I'm like, yeah.
It is so iconic visually that even though I didn't go back to replay this game for this podcast to talk about it, I remember what it looks like. Yeah. And I like, you were talking about the bullet arcs as you like do and that's like synonymous with this subgenre of gaming. Like, you can't talk about the genre without this one being like one of the primary entries.
Absolutely.
And I think it's pretty clear that it had an impact. Like, it spawned how many? Did you say how many follow-ups?
There's 9 main series games, not including the GBA or the Neo Geo Pocket Color or the Xbox, I think, 3D game.
I guess my final thought is that I guess I had been introduced to this instead of Contra.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think it's a fantastic game, and while I think it is overshadowed a little bit by some of its sequels, I still love coming back to this game. The main problem for me is that in Metal Slug 2, they introduced the 2 girls, Eerie and Fio. But yeah, going back to playing as the 2 guys, I'm like, this is kind of fucking boring, actually. But yeah, it's such a badass game, and it's well worth playing. If you are one of these people who exist within the retro community who are like, oh my god, yeah, fucking Contra is the biggest, baddest game in the world, I was like, got fucking news for you, man. You need to go play Metal Slug and see the alternate future that could have been if SNK had taken over the world.
Oh, no. Really, my final thoughts are the recaptured prisoners are basically my spirit animal. I would love to just run up to somebody looking like a hobo and then just pull out a pair of pants or a flag or whatever and just like excitedly too, and then like throw a power up at their face and then run off just flailing my arms and screaming wildly. I would fit right in New York City with that.
Yeah. Hey, maybe we'll do that later tonight.
Kirk's Patronus is a homeless dude with an extra pair of pants.
Yeah. But he has to throw a power up at you. Like a first aid kit in real life. He just like full of band-aids and stuff, just like throws right at your head and then runs away screaming and flailing his arms.
Kirk's Patronus is a homeless man with an extra pair of pants.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to call it here. We haven't decided exactly what our next topic of conversation is going to be, so we'll let you guys know on the Discord if you are interested in following up with us and finding out what we're going to be talking about next. Please go there. The link will be in the show description. Until next time, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys all have fun, you recaptured prisoners.
Tell me, what's your favorite thing about Metal Slug?
Metal Slug! You can shoot things, and it's fun, and you run around, and I can play it with my dada.
Aww. Do you like when things blow up?
Yeah! Blow up!
That's great.
Metal Slug, metal all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open tank. Hey!
All right. Hey, so here's what I want you to do, okay?
Okay.
This is really important.
Okay.
Can you tell everybody, say thanks for listening to the Games That Made Us podcast?
Thanks for listening to the Games That Made Us podcast.
Perfect.